Look, the images we see from Gaza, the horrifying humanitarian situation, are truly appalling. The trajectory of displacement and disenfranchisement of Palestinians in Gaza and the West Bank is unfathomable. Over 56,000 people have now been killed in Gaza, and those are the ones whose deaths have been verified. Many more bodies lie beneath the rubble. Behind each number is an individual, a loved one, a person who had ambitions, dreams, hopes and talents. I'm also acutely aware of the situation in the West Bank. It is clear that Israeli authorities are taking measures designed to bring about the displacement of Palestinian communities. I am deeply concerned about the mass demolition of homes, buildings and infrastructure in camps across the West Bank. It marks the erosion of Palestinian life. Against this backdrop, Ireland's position has been clear and considered. We have not been afraid to use our voices and to take action. Over the past week, the Taoiseach spoke with a number of his counterparts in the Middle East about the escalating hostilities. All thanked Ireland for our consistent and principled position. Let me set out that position again. Ireland strongly condemns the continuing Israeli military operations in Gaza. We urgently need an end to hostilities and a permanent ceasefire. We unequivocally condemn the terror attacks by Hamas in Israel on the 7th of October 2023. The taking of hostages is unconscionable, and I call for the immediate release of remaining hostages. A return to diplomatic talks is imperative. The entire population of Gaza is facing high levels of food insecurity. 1 in 5 face famine. By mid-June, 93% of households also faced water insecurity, exacerbating public health risks. Israel must immediately lift its blockade and allow the full resumption of unimpeded humanitarian aid in line with humanitarian principles. Ireland has used every lever at our disposal to respond to this terrible conflict, and we are continuing to do so. At the Foreign Affairs Council last week, Ireland was not alone in wanting to keep the focus on Gaza and the West Bank amidst the wider regional instabilities. The EU is united in calling for an immediate ceasefire in Gaza, unconditional release of all hostages and immediate unimpeded access and distribution of humanitarian aid in Gaza. Ireland has been at the forefront of Member States' initiatives to press the EU to take further actions in the face of such appalling scenes. We have paved the way for many of the policy advances we are now seeing play out. At the Foreign Affairs Council in May, it was announced that the EU will conduct a review of the association agreement with Israel. Ireland and Spain first called for such a review in February of last year. And a clear majority of Member States agreed on the need to send a strong signal to Israel to reverse course, to halt its military operations and to lift the blockade on life-saving aid. I welcome that the review of Israel's compliance with this obligation under Article 2 of the EU-Israel Association Agreement has now been finalised. It is clear from the review that Israel is in breach of its human rights obligations. This is a significant finding, and the Human Rights Vice President has said she will communicate this clearly to Israel. We are moving the dial. There must now be concrete options for follow-up action to this review, which will be discussed at this month's Foreign Affairs Council. Ireland has consistently called for an adequate response at EU level to the July 2024 advisory opinion of the International Court of Justice, notably as regards trade with Israeli settlements. Together with 8 of our EU counterparts, the Taoiseach wrote to High Representative Callas on the 19th of June, calling for the EU to undertake a detailed review of its compliance with the advisory opinion. This review will now be taken forward in parallel with the review of the Association Agreement. And it is essential that the EU abides by its commitments under international law. Action at the EU level is our preferred option. Our voice is always louder together, and the EU can play an important leadership role and must take action now. Pending an appropriate response at the EU level, last week the government approved the general scheme of the Israeli settlements in the occupied Palestinian territory bill. The scheme delivers on the commitment in the programme for government to progress legislation prohibiting the import of goods from the settlements in the occupied Palestinian territory following the International Court of Justice's advisory opinion. The scheme has been referred to the Oireachtas Committee on Foreign Affairs and Trade for pre-legislative scrutiny and had its first meeting yesterday. And I want to thank Senator Frances Black for her continuing work on the issue. Cathaoirleach, we need a ceasefire and a hostage release deal, and we need a permanent solution for peace and security for both Israel and Palestine and the wider region. Ireland is also working at UN level on measures to push the dial forward. On the 12th of June, the UN General Assembly voted on a draft resolution that demands an immediate, unconditional and permanent ceasefire in Gaza. The vote took place during the 10th emergency special session of the UN General Assembly as part of the Uniting for Peace initiative. Ireland was proud to co-sponsor this resolution. Another shared priority with both our European and regional partners at this time is the UN High-Level International Conference for Peaceful Settlement of the Question of Palestine and the implementation of this two-state solution. Regrettably, the conference has been postponed in response to recent developments in the region. When the rescheduled conference takes place, it will provide an important opportunity to advance discussions on concrete initiatives towards implementing this two-state solution. The importance of recognition of the State of Palestine and support for full UN membership for the State of Palestine is crucial for achieving a parity of esteem between Israel and Palestine, underpinning political pathways to peace and countering extremist narratives that serve to undermine these pathways. This is something that Ireland knows from our own peace process. Our experience in Northern Ireland demonstrates that peace building and conflict resolution work if supported by political commitment at national and international level. We remain convinced that implementation of the two-state solution is the only viable path to lasting security and a sustainable peace for Israelis and Palestinians and the wider region. Similarly, in relation to Iran, the recent conflict has certainly been a shock and a moment of real danger. Along with others, we used our voice to call for de-escalation, dialogue and diplomacy, and for both sides to step back from the brink. We are relieved that a ceasefire is now in place and that it continues to hold. Although both sides were targeting military objectives, many civilians were killed or injured in both Israel and Iran. Attacks on nuclear installations raised the spectre of the release of radiological material, although the IAEA has reported that this was ultimately limited to the sites in question. We must recall also the attack on the territory of Qatar by Iran, even though the US military action on Iran did not originate there. Deputies will also be aware that we've discussed this many times, that there are a number of other concerns with Iran's policies which make better relations very difficult. These include internal repression, support for violent groups around the Middle East, support for radicalisation and attacks on Iranian exiles in Europe, and significant assistance to Russia for its brutal and unjust war against Ukraine. But there may be an opening now to reach a lasting solution to these issues. Iran has choices to make. The Iranian government elected last year has said repeatedly that it wishes to reach less confrontational relations with its neighbours and the outside world. To do so, Iran will have to accept that its security lies not in threats and intimidation, but in positive relations with those around it and a negotiated solution to the concerns of many regarding its nuclear programme. And Iran must embody that understanding in real changes to the course which has led it to its current isolation. If it does, we will be among the many states ready to engage positively with them. Cathaoirleach, Ireland is committed to supporting dialogue to achieve diplomatic solutions for a lasting and sustainable peace across the Middle East. It is clear that military responses cannot bring lasting security to any of the conflicts that afflict the region. What is needed is sustained diplomacy and negotiation with the support of the international community. We will continue to use every option we have at domestic, EU and multilateral level to facilitate such an outcome. And we look forward to continued dialogue with partners in the Middle East also as we pursue this objective. I look forward to the continued cooperation of members across this House in this pursuit, and thank everyone for their contributions to this important and the debate here this afternoon.